What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 525. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, finishing up his cube game still.
Okay, look,
it's Luis Scott-Vargas.
I think you're.
Are you still playing? I know you're still playing. Don't even lie to me. You're
just exaggerating a little bit here. Like,
you need to explain that because you're literally playing.
No. Does it count as finishing the cube game if you've F6 to have lethal on the board?
Yes, it does.
Okay, there. They just conceded. We're done. Look, I was just trying to be efficient, you know?
He's like, yeah, we're good to start the show. I'm like, I know you're still playing. Well, not really. I'm like, all right, whatever. We're doing it. Welcome to LR. Did you win at least, Luis? Please say it.
I did.
Okay. Good job. Then we can keep you around then for another episode at least. This show, we're going to say goodbye to Throne of Eldraine, which has proven to be one of the most controversial sets in recent memory, for sure, particularly because of big picture stuff and its impact on Constructed. But it's not without its controversies for Limited as well. And we're going to be going through all of the goodbyes for Throne of Eldraine today. Before we get to that, though, got to mention our sponsor, channelfireball.com. A couple of things happening over at CFB. First, the new set that's coming out, Theros Beyond Death, in a few weeks' time here. You can pre-order it right now over at Channel Fireball. So any of the officially previewed cards, they'll show up over there. But then you can also, just get a booster box or whatever if you want to get first on the list there and get that booster box into your hands ASAP so you can start doing drafts or sealeds or whatever it is with your friends. You can pre-order those over at Channel Fireball. And while you're over there, you got to check out this new product that they've got. It's called Baller Box. And this is actually really cool. It's Baller Box presented by Cartamajigs. And basically, there's two different ones you can get. You can go to channelfireball.com/baller to check it out. And there's the classic Baller Box where you get a box full of surprises with some, like, they show you what the last one came with. It came with like 5 random packs and token sleeves, card foils, Planeswalker decks, playmat, dice, relic tokens, all this other stuff. So you can see what kind of thing you can expect from it. And then there's also one that is the Draft Night box. And that one actually comes with 24 packs of the latest set. So everything you need for a Draft Night plus extra value bonuses. And you can subscribe to either of those. It's really easy. Again, it's channelfireball.com/baller. for all the information and to subscribe. And the way it works is if you subscribe, you get shipped them to your door 4 times a year. And they just show up and you get a bunch of cool stuff and great value, hopefully, for you coming to your door. So please do check that out over at channelfireball.com/baller. And then, of course, we got to thank our patrons. Patreon.com/limited resources. What another great year for us. We, of course, always try to think of ways to thank our patrons. And I mentioned it before and I put up a tweet and stuff, but I have on the ground sitting next to me here, Luis, 2 full sets of MTG Secret Lair. Ooh. And this, of course, is that special product that...
and that's one for me, one for the patrons.
One each goes to you and then the patron. Yeah, except for that they're all going to go to patrons instead. And we've actually chosen our winners here. And I've got those to announce right now. But again, this is just another one of the ways that we want to, throw things back. Say thank you to our most dedicated listeners and supportive listeners over at patreon.com/limited resources. You get some cool bonuses. But really, any way we can give back, we do try to do so. And this is just another one of those. So let's get to the winners here, Luis. There's 14 of them, because there's 7 of those things in each of the MTG Secret Layers. So let's get right through these. First up, Parker from Culver City, California. Thank you, Parker. Leiden from Spring Hill, Tennessee. John Barley from North Hollywood, California. Tristan Alexander from St. Louis, Missouri. Andaho from Centreville, Virginia. John from Ottawa, Ontario in Canada. Jürgen from Graz, that's in Austria. And this is cool too, right? That we get listeners from all around the world. Oh, yeah. Ryan Chen from Thornton, Colorado. Is that close to you, Luis? Could you just
in fact,
drive that over? Okay. Caden from Oakland, California. Look at that. Colorado right into Oakland. It's the Luis 1-2 punch. Caden Mack, thank you. Mark from Nepean, Ontario, another Canadian there. Alexander Ullman from Brooklyn, New York. We know Alex. He's done a bunch of writing and stuff. Big popper guy and a good friend of mine who I get to see out at the GP scene. Next one is Matt, and I always call it Matt Schneeweiss, which means Snow White. And I've never actually asked him how he pronounces his last name, but I just pronounce it that way because it's German spelling. From Far Rockaway, New York. He's a good friend of mine as well. He lives in New York now, but he comes when he comes home here to Seattle. He drafts with us over at Adam's house, and he's been a longtime supporter of the show. Thank you, Matt. Tim Gerheim from Missoula, Montana, where my grandma used to live, and Travis Chang from Pleasanton, California. So thank you to all of you, and congratulations. Your MTG Secret Layers are already boxed up. I did this right before we recorded the show, and I got printing labels on them, so they're going to get sent out later today or tomorrow. And again, we really just try to do anything we can to say thanks to our patrons. I've been putting up a couple of bonus videos for patrons and all that. And thanks for another great year of supporting the show. We really appreciate it. Okay, Luis, let's get into Throne of Eldraine Sunset Show. First, we have to send it off with our last crack-a-pack for Throne of Eldraine. And let's see what we get here. Hopefully something sweet. Tome Raider.
I do like Tome Raider.
Tome Raider's pretty good. Yeah, so that's fine. Ogun Errant. Didn't end up seeing a ton of play. Oh, sorry. Ogre. What did I say?
Ogun Errant? I was honestly really confused.
Did I literally just make up a new word? What the heck? So. This is bad. Ogre Errant. Ogun. True Love's Kiss. I don't think I ever actually resolved this spell, unfortunately. Smitten Swordmaster. That's a good one. Garenbrig Carver. The 3/2 that
these
is
are all these.
Are these are any of these better than Tome Raider? Is Swordmaster better?
Yeah, Smitten Swordmaster is better than Tome Raider, I would say.
Okay. I'm still taking Tome Raider. Searing Barrage, there's a card. The 5-mana red removal spell. Sure. Eye Collector. No. Nay Collector. Charmed Sleep. I like that card, but I think
Charmed
Searing
Sleep's not
Barrage
bad.
is a little better. Yep. Lockthwain Gargoyle, Trapped in the Tower, which, by the way, is the tower, not a tower.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that one.
Yeah, you don't like that one.
It's obviously fine, but it's not really good.
Shambling Suit. It's fine as well. This pack's kind of meh. Claim the Firstborn, that's the little mini threaten effect. None of these are really jumping out as
no,
Havoc
there's
cards.
Nothing here I'd be happy to first pick.
Okay. I found something that you'd be happy to first pick in our last uncommon. Sir Conrad the Grimm. Boom!
Oh, there we go. Yep, Sir Conrad is great.
Bringing the heat. Sir Conrad's on my short list of, because, we have to pick what the mythic uncommon is for the set. And that was actually the first one that came to mind for me. I've got a couple of other contestants, so we'll sort that out. But Sir Conrad's on the list. But wow, our rare is really good too. It's Gadwick the Wizened.
Ooh.
Which means wrinkled.
Yeah, I think I would take Gadwick. I think Sir Conrad is justifiable there, of course. But Gadwick is just a busted card. And Mono Blue, I think, is a pretty good deck. So yeah.
I like Gadwick here too. I mean, Sir Conrad does really great things, but Gadwick has an effect that is irreplaceable. Of drawing 3 or 4 extra cards when you cast it, and all of a sudden the game's over. Wow, this pack went from very medium to extremely good. Every card was whatever, and then it was Gadwick and Sir Conrad at the end.
Well, yeah, save the best for last. And the person you're passing to doesn't get completely hosed either.
No, not at all. The next person is going to be like, what the? Although, to be fair, there are removal spells in here. There's Trapped in a Tower, Searing Barrage, Charm Sleep. But this is not a bad pack by any stretch. Yeah. Just nothing that you're super stoked on. Okay, so that is our last crack-a-pack there. Let's get in to the Sunset Show. If you could summarize the set in one sentence, what would it be?
Monocolor with a twist.
Yeah, that's good. My take was a little more negative.
What about yours? What do you think, Marshall?
Well, so I decided that for this category, the best thing to do is just go off the top of your head. And I said balanced, but not fun. Which is the first thing that came to my mind. Even though I did have a good time with this set when it came out and for the, first stretch of it, it did not hold my interest to the level that most sets do for the longer term. I mean, when the cube came out, I was rejoicing. And there's been sets over the last couple of years that when the cube came out, I was like, I'm okay for now.
Whatever.
Yeah. And I'll just sort of stay here for now. And then I'll get in some cubes, but it was kind of dabbling, it was just a cube or two. And I've done this cube so many times now, and I want to do it, right after the show. You were doing it sort of at the beginning /
okay, well,
actual show.
It's only because you pulled the trigger quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I didn't ask you if you were ready to do the show. But anyway, that actually is my looking back on its stance is I can't find anything super specific to say this set didn't resonate with me for this particular reason. It was relatively balanced. It threw us a little bit of a curveball with the monocolored stuff. The mechanics worked, right? Like adventure is my kind of mechanic, a good early, do something late mechanic. I love those. In fact, all of my favorite sets have that incorporated on some level. And yet, when this set's gone, I'll be like, okay. And if it comes back, I will not rush back to draft it. And my guess is in 2 years, you could ask me, hey, remember Throne of Eldraine? And I'll say, I remember Oko. And I don't even remember what the limited format was really about. I'll be like, oh, it had those hybrid cards or something, but it won't resonate. It didn't stick with me as like an all-timer by any stretch. So yeah, I don't know. I don't want to sound too complainy because I did enjoy it for its stretch. And maybe my bar has been set really high because over the past 2 to 3 years, we've had limited home runs. I mean, we really have just been spoiled with just like great limited set after great limited set. After, say, like Ixalan.
Yeah, I mean, Dominaria was obviously just, like,
fantastic. Right. And, War of the Spark was a little controversial, but the 2 sets prior to it, I thought I actually
love War of the Spark.
Yeah, and I actually ended up liking it, too, personally, but I realized that wasn't the universal opinion. But still, I like that a lot. And then Ravnica Allegiance was fantastic. Whatever it was before that.
Guilds Ravnica. I liked RNA more than Guilds, but I thought they were quite good. Yeah, Throne is in an interesting position, and we're going to obviously as we go through this show, we're going to kind of see this unfold. But
yeah,
we were both discussing this right before we fired, which is like, why didn't this set grab us more? What about the set kind of led to that? Because I agree with you. I don't have as negative a take as you, I don't think, but I agree with you that like relatively early on, I did stop playing the set for fun. Not super early on, but not too far after the Pro Tour, which is like a whole nother thing, which I actually think the set kind of got unfairly maligned as a result. But in any case, I think that the set is not outstanding in any particular direction, and as we get to it later, we'll probably talk about kind of how our perception was shaped by it. But it was a complicated set. It had a lot of stuff going on, and I do tend to like those things.
Yeah, generally speaking, those are what we like. Well, let's start to paint the picture of how the set played out and get into our categories, and we'll kind of dive deeper into this as we go. So, what turned out to be the best archetypes in this set?
Monocolor aggro, I think mono red, mono white, I think were both pretty good. Mono green, basically mono. All the colors were good. I found that mono black was the hardest one for me to get into in terms of what I saw. But all the monocolor decks were good, which is actually kind of a success. It's hard to get that many of the same archetype to be good.
Yeah, the monocolored thing was interesting because I remember seeing some stuff on social media from Wizards employees, indicating that they thought that we were going to be drafting monocolored like a lot. Yeah. And more than, Shadowmoor Eventide, which was one of the last times we had kind of a real nod to this with the hybrid mana symbols and stuff. And my experience was not that. That did not end up being the case. But the fact that these monocolor decks existed, they were part of the metagame. You could draft them. They did exist. You would face them occasionally. Was really a tricky thing to hit, and they hit it.
Yeah.
My question, the thing that I wonder or that I noticed was, do I want that? Like if you walk up to me and go, check out this deck, and you hand me a monocolored deck and a set that supports monocolored decks, I don't know. I felt like I didn't necessarily, like I would almost be happier with a 2-color deck a lot of the time because they were a bit more powerful, if a little less consistent. And then, often. And then also they were more interesting. Like, having multiple colors means you find cool interactions and things that you don't see every time. Where with monocolored decks, it is what it is. The tension on the mana is somewhat reduced. You still need the proper amount, but the color part goes away. You get access to some stuff that's pretty cool, right? Like you get to play your Arcanist Owls and stuff in your mono blue deck just kind of for free. And that is really cool. And that's a highlight. But overall, you don't get to sideboard really ever because you're usually short on playables. And even if you're not, like you have like one sideboard card in your color or something, to me, it takes away a little bit from the interest.
Huh.
Is that a goal? Is that a goal that we want,
I don't. Well, it's certainly not a goal to take away from your interest.
No, not that part. The monocolor decks,
Well, I think that having a monocolors be a format, I enjoyed this set of monocolor decks more than some iterations. Like I think going way back to like Eventide and Shadowmoor, I didn't like the monocolor themes there all that much. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that I would say I'm intrinsically as opposed to monocolor as you seem to be.
Yeah, I think that like I liked the idea until I got the decks in my hand, and I'm kind of going, these aren't that exciting. Like, I don't know. I didn't feel clever. I didn't feel like I was doing anything above and beyond by playing monocolor decks, I guess. And I think I thought I would. Like, I think I thought, okay, I did it. You know what I mean? I got away with it. I put together this deck. I get to run these quad colored hybrid cards with no downside for me. I just, and I thought I'd really feel like I was doing it. And that did happen a few times, to be fair. I had a few mono blue decks that I felt were really, really strong in that regard. But I also tried monocolored a few other times and it really felt flat. Like a mono green I had twice in the format and just felt like this deck just does not interact in any meaningful way. And if my opponent just plays like Sir Conrad, I'm just screwed, and by the way, that's what happened.
Well, I think that
anyway,
regardless of your stance on them, monocolor decks were certainly good.
Yes.
Blue, black, and green, black food, blue, black control, green, black food were decent. I didn't like those quite as much as you did, I don't think.
I like them a lot. Yeah.
Red, white, black knights, which largely means red, white knights or white, black knights or black, red knights, but not all three. Like straight up Mardu knights was generally not the place you wanted to be.
Right.
But all the knights colors were good and good in combination. So definitely some, a pretty wide variety of good decks from really controlling like mono blue style decks, especially ones that are trying to mill you out, to really aggressive like mono green decks or red white decks that are trying to like leverage combat tricks in a good curve. I do like when something like Wildwood Tracker, a 1-drop is playable and then, also, like late game control decks are also playable. I think that's pretty cool.
No, that is good, and they did seem to utilize the majority of the cards in the card file found a home, which is impressive. What cards were we most wrong about during the review, or really surprised us one way or the other?
I think combat tricks, particularly the ones on adventures, but even like something like Barge In, was really good, right? And I think that the fact that just combat tricks landed nicely was something that we didn't predict. So
yeah, and especially on the lesser looking ones, right? Like because a bunch of, like combat tricks were kind of the go-to thing for the common adventure creatures. There was 3 or 4 of them that had a combat trick attached to them, and especially the weaker looking combat tricks like Rimrock Knight. Those ones, I don't think we liked them very much. I don't remember what we gave those, but I remember feeling like, I'd rather have +2/+2 for a little bit more mana to get that consistent kind of, I can block and pump, or I can, my guy survives combat or whatever, and kind of discounting, +2/+0 and low, high power, low toughness creatures, even though that did not end up playing out that way. Rimrock Knight somehow ended up being the better of those ones.
Yeah, I thought Rimrock Knight was awesome. It ended up being one of my favorite cards in the set. It just played so beautifully in so many different ways.
Right, but it didn't look like it, right?
No. I would not say that at the outset of the, during our set review, right when the set came out, I was like, oh yeah, Rimrock Knight, I'm going to love that card.
Exactly.
That's not where that landed. So we certainly were wrong about that. I also think we underrated the monocolor payoffs a bit.
Like which ones? Like the colorless stuff, or?
Yeah, like stuff like Clockwork Servant or Outmuscle, that sort of thing. The adamant stuff. And where I think it was interesting was it didn't look to us like the payoffs for being in monocolor were huge. And I actually think that was true. Like, this is not, Corrupt is 5 and a black sorcery, deal damage equals number of swamps you have, you gain that much life. Like, that's a monocolor payoff. Jaws of Stone from Shadowmoors, 5 and a red, deal X damage divided as you choose among any creatures, where X number of mountains you control. Like, that's a payoff,
Huge, yeah.
We didn't see cards like that, so we're like, I don't know about this monocolor stuff. It turns out just getting to consistently have 3 of the same color to cast your adamant cards was enough of a payoff, even if there was nothing like in neon signs saying, yeah, monocolor is great.
It was like a more incremental advantage.
Yeah.
What were some of the most underrated cards? At least at some point, right? It's hard to snapshot it now when we have the format fully fleshed out, but there were, kind of as we went along, a card that you ended up jumping on pretty early was Fairy Guide Mother.
Do love me the Guide Mother.
Yeah. And, I think that card was underrated to start the format by a lot. Like it really, we underrated it for starters, and, reading it now, it still doesn't look very good to me. Right. But it played really well. And I remember you really liked it, pretty early in the format. Yeah.
So I think that Midnight Clock was probably our biggest miss in terms of a rating, though that was partially because we just misread how the card worked.
Yeah.
which we found out when we opened Twitter the next morning, and there was like 50 tweets saying like, did you know that Midnight Clock gets one every upkeep? Which is completely fair. We missed that. That's on us. It is. Yeah. I like how invested our listeners are. It is really funny though.
Yeah. Yeah. And the really funny part was we still kind of liked it. Remember, like we were like, I think we're still going to play it. Right. And they were like, guys, it's way better than you think. And once it got to that, we were like, oh, I'm in, cause like even with that, what we thought it was, we were kind of like, I don't know. I think I can play this. And yeah, I like that one. I remember So Tiny early on. I was playing a bunch of those, and that card would go way, way, way too late, and then that kind of got short up.
Revenge of Ravens is a story in and of itself, because this is the enchantment that whenever they attack you with a creature, for each creature they attack you with, you gain a life and they lose a life. We hedged even, and we're like, hey, this looks like it could be a lot better, or this is the kind of card that's a lot better than it looks. We're going to give it a kind of tentative grade.
We gave it an A, though.
I think we gave it an A, yeah.
A minus.
And no, but it turns out this card was underrated. Though then it like kind of skewed back towards overrated, I think. Like
it did.
And people were like, this is a bomb, and it's like, no, you still want to take like Sir Conrad over it. Like it's not, it's not an unbeatable card or whatever.
Yeah. One of them kind of what ended up being, maybe call it a headliner, a topic of discussion very often for the set, and I think it really highlights some of the depth that this set did bring to the table, was Gingerbrute, right? Which we wrote off early and did not look like a powerful Magic card. It looked like a nod to a great top-down design and a meme within the set's theme. And it kind of looked like that's what they were trying to do with that, and that was it. Comparing it to like Inquisitive Puppet, right? Which had the same reaction from me. I'm like, oh, I get it. It turns into a boy. It's Pinocchio. Okay, that's cute, right? But then I never played Inquisitive Puppet because that card, while a cool top-down design, sucks, right? I'm like, I don't want to play it. And I thought Gingerbrute was the exact same way. I thought, oh, that's a cute design. It turns out it actually fit into the format really well. And it took people a little while, including me, to recognize, no, this card's actually like, it actually has a home here. Like you can play this thing.
Yeah, I think Gingerbrute both delivered on flavor, but also on gameplay. It is a extremely strong card, and in the right deck. I mean, you can't just jam it in every deck, which people started to do it to a degree. But like anytime you're attacking, or you have like Rosethorn, Halberd, or you're just like an aggressive deck, it actually kind of does deliver the gingerbread cookies. I think gingerbread was sweet.
Me too. And, the thing that I recognized about it was it needs to be augmented, but only slightly. Like if it goes from 1 power to 2, it's a problem. It's a big issue. So yeah, our old buddy, the Ginger Brute. What were the most controversial cards?
Merfolk Secret Keeper for sure. And that has to do with Arena in large part.
Yeah.
Improbable Alliance, I think, because
you don't like it, right?
Well, no, I liked I was like, oh, this blue-red draw 2 theme is really sweet. I think this is going to be good. And then it just turns out like, no, that theme is not very good. It's hard to get the payoffs and stuff like Improbable Alliance was really what suffered.
Yeah. Yeah. That made it really tough because you needed you needed to open Ironcrag Pyromancer and then get past at some point one of those. And then you could build a deck that worked as long as you didn't face Merfolk Secret Keeper deck. Is a lot to ask, especially if you played primarily on Arena. And Merfolk Secret Keeper was probably the most talked about card for the format, right? I mean, it overall, in many ways defined it. Yeah, because of the Arena bots and the situation with those where they just ignored the card. I mean, it just I remember getting screenshots, especially on that first build before they adjusted it, where people would have 6 Merfolk Secret Keepers in their deck. 6. I'm like, what the heck? 7? 5? It was like, oh, they got 4. And when you can get the cards, this type of card in that number, then all of a sudden it becomes a win condition. And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, as we learned, you could have Merfolk Secret Keeper be a win condition when you had 2 of them if you had the right other cards to go with them.
That's right. Yeah, and that part was really interesting. That was kind of the shame to me, is that Secret Keeper ended up being actually a really interesting card because of that reason. But the whole point of cards like that, right, are that they make you incur risk. If you take them early in a draft, they don't do anything unless you fully get there with the deck.
Right.
And so, but if we're drafting on Arena, you could almost with impunity know that you were going to wheel the card. And when you have that level, now you can take Charm Sleep and wheel the Secret Keeper, and you're getting it back. You never have that assurance in a person-to-person draft. Somebody might just take it because they feel like it. You might be fighting somebody for the archetype. And that is a game changer for cards like this that are very narrow and that you need critical mass of if you're going to be like the full-on version of the deck. You kind of ruined it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, the other thing, of course, is Oko.
Right. We should mention that Oko, if this is limited resources, so we're sticking to limited. But what were the most controversial cards from Throne of Eldraine? Well, even our little limited bubble gets popped a bit by the elephant in the room that is Oko, Thief of Crowns, which is, historically controversial. I mean, maybe saying controversial isn't even right. Because everybody agrees, but it's easily the most talked about card. So I think of 2 cards that I could compare since my time in Magic, right? Which was, around 2008 is when I came back. And that's Jace the Mind Sculptor and Oko Thief of Crowns. Those are the 2 cards that receive the most attention and ire and everything since I've been back. And they're the only 2 cards in that category. You've got cards that were certainly the boogeyman of their day, but these 2 cards transcended all of that. Is there anything else in your Magic career that reaches the fever pitch of an Oko or Jace?
No, I don't think so.
Those are the 2. What was the artifact deck like that? The artifact lands and frogmites? No,
Affinity?
not Tempered Steel. Yeah, Affinity.
No, I mean Affinity was about as busted. Like I guess it depends on what axis you're talking. I think like the closest parallel to Oko is Cobblade when Stoneforge Mystic and Jace got banned. But Arcbound Ravager and Friends getting banned out of Affinity is similar, and these are a couple of the worst times in constructed Magic history. So Oko definitely deserves a spot there with them.
Yeah. So congrats, Oko. You made the bad list. What was your favorite artwork from a card in this set?
I actually really liked Ardenvale Tactician. The sunlight framing the Tactician I thought was really cool.
Oh, beautiful artwork.
Yeah. So I was a fan of that. I think
that was Jason Rainville that did that.
Jason Rainville, yeah. I thought that was really sweet. Yeah. What about you?
Mine was Castle Lochthwain, which is the Black Castle, and it is. I'm a big sucker for landscapes of really any sort. But Castle Lochthwain kind of sitting out in the water, and it's got this big kind of jetty thing coming off of it, and it looks like maybe it was a ship of some sort at one point. I love it. That one is by Titus Lunter, who's one of my favorite Magic artists. Full stop. He's incredible, and I remember we gave it away, but when we opened up one of those special booster packs, this was the full art foil that we got.
Nice,
and I was like, wow, like that thing is just like. Bam, in your face. Beautiful.
This might be a good time to say it. I really love the flavor of the set. The trailer was really cool. I think that the fantasy stories in card form, like the kind of, Brothers Grimm dark fantasy stories in card form, I think was very successful. I think if you want to look at wins,
I'm glad you brought that up.
That's a big
that was a huge win. Yeah. And I mean, this set resonated with we're down here in the limited minds, right? We're in the nitty gritty of, power and toughness and just, archetypes, casting costs, all that kind of stuff. But boy, if we just come out of the minds and wipe off our eyes a little bit, this set resonated with so many people in such a big way. And, it's interesting because I think all the way back to the trailer, right? The now famous gingerbread, you're just too good to be true trailer,
you're just
right?
Too good to be true.
Yeah, right. And and it was. I remember when people first saw it. I remember when I first saw it, and I was like, "Dang!" Right? Because they had come off of the prior trailer, the one with Liliana. And all that, which was also just like a stunning piece of work. And I know that, when people saw the Throne of Eldraine trailer, they were like, what in the world? Like it ends, spoiler alert, with a gingerbread cookie holding like a serving fork and flying through the air in anger at Garrick. And it's like, what kind of a world are we going to get into here? And then as the cards started coming out, you could see a rededication to top-down design that really resonated. I mean, the ones that they hit, we talked about Ginger Brood and the Pinocchio card and stuff. And I mean, these were just like, this is what draws people into Magic. Like these type of designs. We talked about this for the Arabian Nights and Antiquity set review with Ben Sek, that, there was this like emphasis on top-down design when the game first came out. They kind of got away from it, but you can see that there's really been a rededication to it. And I think that Throne of Eldraine is a great example of that. So I'm glad you brought that up, Luis, because that is something that's much bigger picture than we normally deal with, but is really important to the story of this set.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the overall how the set feels matters a lot for Limited too. So
yes, that's true. What were the best build-around cards? Lucky Clover's the best one, right? I mean,
Lucky
that thing
Clover
was
really sweet. I think Edgewall Innkeeper was also a really good build-around, though I think it was actually overrated a bit. Just because you really need to draw 2 cards to get your money, because drawing 1 is just, you have a 1-mana 1/1 that drew a card, that's okay, but it's not like you blew the doors off the the whole thing. And then it didn't do that much late. If you drew your cards in the wrong order, it could be bad. So I think that card was a build around worth noting, but I remember at like one of the first Grand Prix of the format, people were like, this might be the best uncommon, and it's like, well, it's not the best uncommon. Like,
no,
there's just no way. So I think that
it did have probably the highest ceiling, but
I think it's worth noting, that it is a decent build around. I do think that Dance of the Manse and Irencrag Pyromancer are both rares that paid you off severely. If you severely is not the right word. They really paid you off richly if you were able to build it up around them. Dance was harder.
I like severely.
Yeah, severely. Like, you will get paid off. Dance was harder.
No, I'm serious.
Part of the reason Pyromancer was so strong was that you didn't need that much to make it work, and she was really good at when she did. Whereas Dance was a sick endgame card if you could pull it off.
Yeah, one of the one of the tools we use on the show to talk about these type of cards is a setup cost, right? It's how much do I have to put in up front during the draft and the deck build to try to make this work. And a card like Dance of the Mans has quite a high setup cost, where Ironcrake Pyromancer is kind of in the middle. You get one trigger off of the Pyromancer and you're actually okay with that. And as an 0-4 or whatever, it's like acceptable. The second trigger, the game's kind of over. And of course you can just, go off with that. Edgewall Innkeeper, as it turns out, had a higher setup cost than it initially appeared. I think a lot of people thought along the lines of what you were thinking. Well, if I get my card back, it's fine. But it's like, it's really not. You need to kind of go off. But if you did, right, if you met that bar, it was stupid. I mean, it was just completely, there was fewer scary things than turn one Edgewall Innkeeper. Sometimes it sat there and did nothing. And sometimes it was like, this game is so over, that you're never going to be able to keep up with the thing.
Yeah. I mean,
of course,
if you had the Edgewall Innkeeper into like Rimrock Knight into a 3-drop, like, then yes, you were just gonna run your opponent over very quickly.
Yeah, and it's just hard to do. What about Improbable Alliance? I mean, this has to be one of the best build-arounds still in the set, right? I mean, you just think that it flopped that hard?
No, I think it was a good build-around. That deck. The weakness of the blue-red draw 2 deck, there was two. One was that it was bad against the mill deck, which mattered more on Arena than in paper, but still mattered. You don't like conceding against like 2/3 of the heavy blue decks you play against, right? Because even the like normal heavy blue decks were still pretty focused on had a couple mill cards just randomly because they would just play 2 Merfolk Secret Keepers, and sometimes that's all you needed to kill someone. The other problem was it had mostly uncommon payoffs, so it didn't, I don't think, do quite as well when you look at the the test of like, okay, can you get there without uncommons in your deck? And the answer is largely no.
Yeah, well, now what about it on its own?
On its own,
because remember, it has an activated ability, like it gives you something to do later if you don't fully get there.
Yeah, that's true.
Just too slow.
Yeah, I think it was just too slow. Like, it just was not... Like, the average red-blue deck would want this card, but this card was not one that you could play without doing some work to make it good. So
yeah, and the hard part was definitely the payoffs.
Yeah.
It was getting enough payoffs. That was the hard part. You could definitely draw extra cards. There was multiple ways to do that at common. Many of them didn't let you keep the cards in your hand, but, you could get the triggers on these things. The question was, what are the triggers doing? And if they're making 1/1 flyers or doing 3 damage, you were very, very happy. But the drop off after those 2 cards was very sharp. And, +2/+0 on my guy. It's like, well, okay, that's not that great. +1/+1, on my 2/1. It's just too many of them were not good enough to make it worth it. Was this a Prince or Pauper set?
Oh, definitely a Pauper set. I mean, there were some good rares, as there always are, but this wasn't particularly close, I don't think. Like the commons and uncommons dictated largely how your deck went. So
oh my God, you killed this next category. I'm so mad at you for finding that. It's a bad card, but I love it anyway award. I picked Giant Skewer mainly just because I played it more often than I thought I would, even though I don't think it's good, but you just waltzed in here and just sniped the best possible answer. What did you say?
Bartered Cow. The amount
so good.
The amount of red blue decks I had with Bartered Cow in them was like pretty high.
You had red blue Bartered Cow. Wow.
Oh yeah. It was fun. I love doing that stuff. So
Bartered Cow, man. That guy really did not have a good time in the format, I'll tell you that. What about the I literally never win with it, but always seems to beat me card?
For me, I had Embereth Paladin. This is the 4/1 because
it's another good answer. God dang it!
I would frequently just get run over by this card. So it was pretty. That part was pretty frustrating.
It's so brutal if they catch you with no blockers and get to
when they catch you with your pants down, as it were. It was not good.
It is not good when that happens. Yeah, I have nothing for that. What was my opponent played this, so now I must win or quit Magic forever card. For me, it was Inquisitive Puppet. If somebody goes turn 1 Inquisitive Puppet, I'm cracking my knuckles. I'm like, okay, it's all on the line. Your Magic career's here.
High stakes.
You cannot lose to this. What was the one for you?
For me, it was Crystal Slipper. I actually think Crystal Slipper was a pretty decent card. If you really had a specific sideboard, like a specific sideboard plan in mind. But for the most part, when I saw my opponent play it, I'm like, I really don't want to lose this.
Yeah, because it is a pretty low impact card overall.
Yeah.
But it's so pretty. What was the biggest groan test card in the set? I had, interestingly, normally this goes to kind of more expensive, or like I was doing it and now I just lost cards. For me, it was actually Barge In, which is weird to give it to a combat trick, but there's two reasons for it. One, it's pretty dang powerful. I mean, it just ended up piling on a bunch of extra damage that, you thought I blocked okay. And all of a sudden you're like, is that a human? No. Is that a human? No. And
certainly a good card.
Yeah. So it had that kind of really high upside in the right deck and in the right scenario for just the 1 mana. But the other thing was, and this is where the real groan comes in, is when you could have done something about the card before they were attacking, before the creature, they were attacking, and not opened yourself up to get hit by a Barge In, like if you had a burn spell or something like that. And you're like, oh my God, I could have totally played around this one card that really does a lot of things in this situation. And instead I let them get me, and I just played it like I'd play a normal scenario where if they have a combat trick, I'm going to respond or whatever. And all of a sudden they get you. That was the groan test for me. What about for you?
For me, it was just Embercleave. Embercleave was just a messed up card. You just never won. It almost isn't a groan test because the game never, it's not like, I cast Overrun, now you have to do math. It's like, Embercleave, okay, well, that's easy enough. I'll just go to the next game. Why would I even bother doing anything else?
But seriously, Embercleave is the groan equipment. That is the perfect. It is exactly the blowout that you're like.
This card has won a bunch of Pro Tours. It's clearly good enough to see playing constructed.
Yeah, so, for sure.
Yeah, I think
it's also mythic, so it comes up not that often. So when it does, it's extra groan. You're like, oh, that you had that.
I mean, the low grade version of this, the common version of this, which I think is pretty cool, is the Outmuscle on Merrily Rider, the 3/1 that has to be blocked. When you go Outmuscle with Adamant, make my guy a 4/2, fight your thing, it's indestructible, then sack a food, attack, and you have to block with another thing, my thing's still indestructible.
Oh yeah, that is good. And that's two real things that they're losing to 4 power also. That's not just kill your 1/1 or whatever. So
yeah. So really I like that. I like that combo quite a bit. Is very good. That's the one where it's like, oof.
Yeah, that's a groan test for sure. What was the most frustrating, quote, bad card to lose to, or maybe a card you won't miss playing?
For me, it was Burning Yard Trainer, which is kind of a weird choice, but this is the 5 mana 3/3 trample haste, and when ETBs gives another knight you control +2/+0 trample and haste.
That's a lot of damage.
And it's just it's the kind of card that by itself, so 5 mana 3/3, and it's pretty bad even with haste. But when they set it up and it was equivalent to a 5/5, it felt really hard to stop. That it meant that I would lose to this. Oh, it's actually, sorry, +2/+2 trample and haste, even better. I would lose to this card at a decent clip, but I never really tried to get it to work because I didn't think it was all that good.
Yeah. It's funny because if you add it up, it is charging Monstrosaur. If everything's right, when it's not, it's really not charging Monstrosaur. But the one for me was Fling. Almost never play the card. I don't play around it because it's really hard to play around. But how many times do they just attack in? Sure, I'll take it. They use a pump spell. You're like, okay, I'll take some more, and then they're fling it at you. You're dead, and you're just like, come on. That's how this game's going to end. You're just going to fling this.
One of my favorite games to win was I was playing on the plane on the way to the Mythic Championship, and had this huge stalled board that I was losing, but I just made an all out attack, and they ended up not blocking Lovestruck Beast with they just put a token in front of it, and I had the combo of your two favorite cards, Barge In plus Fling, to just kill them basically out of nowhere.
Man, that's a double groan test for sure. Your poor opponent. That's brutal. All right. What was the bombiest bomb, the card that you hoping to open up in your sealed or draft packs?
So I think it's a tie between two cards, and I don't know which one's actually correct. But one is Oko, because Oko is a 3-mana card that wins you the game on the spot most of the time, or at least it's very hard to beat. The other is Embercleave, which also wins you a game on the spot, but is a monocolored card. So I could see a pretty strong argument for either one, to be honest. But obviously I'm not complaining either way.
Yeah, and the difference basically you're saying is if you open Oko, pack one, pick one, great, you take it. But you are blue-green here, and there's a better chance that you won't play it versus if you open Embercleave and can put it into any red deck.
Yeah.
I'm still going to go Oko.
Yeah, I think there's like there's a good argument for that. I do think I would rather. I think I would probably rather have Oko most of the time, but Embercleave is definitely on the list. I don't know. It's pretty close between the two.
Pretty close, yeah. All right, let's get into the best common for each color. So white, Ardenvale Tactician, right?
Yeah, I think I actually don't think that one's close either.
No, it started off with Trapped in the Tower being kind of the de facto choice, but quite quickly in the format, it moved over to Ardenvale Tactician, and that gap grew. Blue is actually, I think, the hardest one here. I have Charm Sleep, So Tiny, Unexplained Vision. I guess I should put Merfolk Secret Keeper on this list somehow, but
I think at the end of it, most likely your blue deck needed So Tiny more than anything else.
Okay. Yeah, I like So Tiny in that spot.
Yeah, sure. I'm not 100% sure there.
Yeah.
Black. That was the cool thing about blue. It didn't have a Windmill Slam common. If you look, these are all pretty close, and none of them are like insanely better than others, I don't think.
No, I agree.
It had a lot of really strong commons.
Yeah, I mean, there's others that are right there too. Like Witching Well was very strong and fit into multiple archetypes, for example. As one that was, close to that level. So yeah, there was a lot that blue was very flat, but powerful as well. Yeah. Black was baked into a pie, not even remotely.
No, that's not close.
Man, that card, it overperformed, and we already knew it was great. I mean,
it was the card that everyone knew was going to be good, and then it was good, then it was even better.
And it was even better than that. Yeah, the interesting thing was that it went well into the food decks as you would expect, as it produces food and kills a creature. But it also just gaining the 3 life for a control deck was really clutch too. Like, kill your creature, gain 3 life was a big deal later in the game. For red, I had Scorching Dragonfire, just the cheap burn spell.
Yeah, I mean, I think that again, it's hard to argue against that. Like, just the best removal spell in the color is generally the best common. I mean, white for white and green, I actually don't think that's necessarily the case, but it is for the other colors.
Yeah, for green, I had Fierce Witchstalker as number 1 without muscle kind of on its heels, but I like Fierce Witchstalker better.
One of the things Eldraine did well, and I hope they continue, is just each color has like a pretty like a marquee common, with the exception of blue, I guess. Blue just doesn't but a marquee common where it just really feels like you're getting away with something when you play it. I actually think that's great for limited, because it means that you get that joy more often than if you just play with higher rarity cards. And I think the commons being good. My favorite limited sets, the commons are strong.
Yeah, so for sure.
I really like that, there's Fierce Witchstalker, Bake into a Pie, Scorching Dragonfire. Like, these cards all, I think, feel very good to play. And I like that, these colors have access to them. So I think Fierce Witchstalker is better than Outmuscle. You will end up in some games taking Outmuscle over the Witchstalker, but in general, I think Witchstalker is where you want to be.
Before we move on to the Mythic Uncommon for this set, I did want to touch on Ardenvale Tactician one more time, because the discussions come up in the community and on the show multiple times regarding fixing white. It has been underpowered a bit in limited as of late, and seems to have lost its way a little with regards to what its mission statement is, if you will. We had talked before that, I talked with Ryan about this, with coverage folks, and with you, that one of the ways that we could see white coming back was actually cards exactly like Ardenvale Tactician, right? Cards that were good when you cast them, but also had utility late game if you drew them late in an aggressive shell. Do you expect to see more of this going forward? Because that's it, right? That's what we want. Like, if you want aggressive decks to be better in white, then you need more Ardenvale Tacticians around.
Yeah, I think that this is the kind of card that is a success under that metric, and I do like seeing it. So
is it just that there's not enough of them?
It's hard to design cards like that, I think.
Okay.
So I think that it's not trivial to find answers that have that. I like it. I do hope we see more of it.
All right. So what's a mythic uncommon for the set? For me, I think it's Sir Conrad the Grimm.
Yeah, I think Sir Conrad is pretty good. I kind of hate to say Epic Downfall because this is a great removal spell. This is the 1 and a black sorcery, exile a creature could cost 3 or more. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that card is really good. It's just such an efficient answer to the cards you actually want to answer. But it also doesn't feel like there's other good removal spells in the set, so it doesn't feel like you really get away with something when you have it. It's a good card,
right?
For me, it might be Covetous Urge. I think that card's busted.
Yeah, I loved Covetous Urge as well.
That was like one of the main reasons to draft blue-black. And it was great in mono-blue as well, of course.
Okay, let's give it to Covetous Urge. We both really liked it. And it was...
I mean, it was a mega powerful card. It maybe wasn't a mythic uncommon in the exact sense that, like, first picking this card is not going to be quite as effective because you don't know if you're going to end up with the quad blue-black mana, but I still think the card was insane.
Yeah, for sure. Sir Conrad scowls at us. What's the worst card in the set? The biggest blank, the most last picked. I'm going to go the Magic Mirror here.
Yeah, I think that Deafening Silence is also a good.
Yes, that's a good one.
A good call there. Though it's kind of funny because the Magic Mirror is the card that is nearly impossible to cast and also probably loses you the game when you cast it.
Yeah, it like actually kills you for your 9 mana troubles. It's like, I guess I don't like what I see in the mirror because, the artwork is stunning and it's a cool card. But yeah, it's funny that you get to the point of the game where you can finally get the Magic Mirror on the battlefield and then it just kills you a few turns later before you can take advantage. So yeah, I'm going to go Magic Mirror. It's the worst. Which card was the most begrudgingly playable? I have Knight of the Keep. That's the 3/2 Knight.
Yeah, Knight of the Keep. For me, I often would put 7 dwarves in my deck, even without a whole lot of 7 dwarves, just because you needed a 2-drop.
So you have to specify the singleton 7 dwarves.
Yeah.
That's the most begrudgingly of the begrudgingly.
Or when you had like 2 of them. But I played the card with 1. You just need 2 drops sometimes. But Knight of the Keep's a good answer as well.
We're going for peak begrudgingly, though, right? So it's got to be the single.
Yeah, that's true.
Is there a card that you're going to miss drafting? And I kind of copped out here because I think I only had this card once or twice, but I said the Great Henge, super powerful, but also really fun. It was balanced in the sense that like, it's not like you could just play it like Oko on turn 3 and be like, well, this game's over. It made you work for it a little and then sort of let you come back. And I like cards like that a lot. So I'll miss the rare few times that I opened up the Great Henge and got to play it.
Yeah, I think Rimrock Knight was actually my most missed card.
Man, you love that card.
Which is again a weird thing to say, but I just loved Rimrock Knight. It was just my favorite thing to be doing. What
were the odds that during the set review I stopped you and said, prediction, Rimrock Knight's going to be your favorite card to draft that you're going to miss the most? You would have been like, no.
I would have called you crazy, yes.
We just given it like a D plus or C minus or something.
Yeah.
It's funny.
I did love Rimrock Knight, though.
You did love it, though. What was the LSV-ist and the Martialist cards in the set?
I think Improbable Alliance is a good choice for mine. It does exactly what I want to do, draw extra cards. I do a lot of sitting around and trying to really just spin your wheels, but somehow make forward progress. Like, I actually think that was a good choice for that one.
That's really good. Yeah, spin your wheels with minimal forward progress. That's the Luis card evaluation. It did. Mine was actually Arcanist Owl. Really liked that card a lot. It had a decent percentage of the time that you could miss with it, but when it hit, it was very strong. A sometimes 2-for-1 on a decently priced body. That obviously good value, right? Especially if built around. Really like it. I liked Arcanist Owl a lot. That was one of my favorite cards in the set.
I actually loved Arcanist Owl. That was like the mono blue artifact enchantment deck with Moonlit Scavengers and Arcanist Owls and like eggs and stuff was one of my favorite decks to draft.
Definitely. What was my soapboxiest card? It's interesting because there's a few to choose from the more controversial stuff like Secret Keeper and stuff like that. But the one that I thought of and the one I want to highlight here is Shine Chaser.
Mm-hmm. This is that was the blue white gold payoff card. Yeah.
Yeah. And it really tilted me because I felt like I was the only one who read this stupid card because people kept being like, oh, well, you got a Shine Chaser, so you should probably be blue-white and all that. I'm like, have you read this card? Like, it is not that good. Shine Chaser, 1 white, blue, 1/1 flying vigilance. It gets +1/+1 if you control an artifact and also +1/+1 if you control an enchantment. But that's it. Like, it maxes out at a 3/3 flying vigilance for 3, which admittedly is excellent. But also, it was very rarely that the time when you first started to attack. It usually ended up being a 2/2 vigilance flyer for 3, which is fine. It's not even that exciting. There's plenty of monocolored cards that could compete with that in the set. And in the times when you put together all the magic pieces of the puzzle and got your Shine Chaser up to full value, it was like Vantress Paladin blocks it. Like, it wasn't even, it wasn't like who did
more work? The person who put artifacts and enchantments in their deck that maybe they wouldn't have played or drafted otherwise, or the person that tapped 3 islands and one of any other land to cast their card.
Right. And probably cast it on average about the same turn because Shine Chaser is a gold card, and especially when you compare it to some of the other options like Savvy Hunter or Steel Claw Lance and stuff that were really good, like had a major impact on the board. Where Shine Chaser was like, fine. It was an okay card. I always, of course, played it in my blue-white decks. It wasn't like it was bad, but people acted like it was like a real payoff. And it always tilted me because I was like, that's not. It's medium. It's just okay. The other one that came to mind was Linden, the Steadfast Queen. Just because I don't understand Linden. Maybe I do now that I've seen some of the preview cards for Theros Beyond Death, because Linden is triple white and there's, what is it called? Devotion is a thing. Yeah. So maybe that's why
they're setting the table for that.
Yeah. And that's great. I get it. I translated it. But 3 months ago, it was like, why am I working so hard to get Linden into my deck? Sure, if I'm mono white, I'll play Linden. Otherwise, never. It's 3/3 for 3 with some minor abilities. So that always kind of tilted me too. All right. Stepping back down off of the soapbox. What card do you still have to read when it's cast against you? There's actually a lot. Like, here, I'm going to test you right now. The one that came to mind for me was Wintermoor Commander. Can you tell me what it does? Do you have any idea what this card is?
It's white-black for a 2x Death Touch, and X is number of knights you control. It itself is a knight. And then when it attacks, another target attacking knight becomes indestructible until end of turn.
Yeah, that's pretty close. It's not attacking knight. It's just another knight. But yeah, you actually do know what it does, which is probably more than I could have told you. But this set actually had a lot. Because Outlaws Merriment.
Yeah, so this is 1 white, red. I think it's more white than red. But I could be wrong.
I'm going to look right now. It is. You're right. It's 1 white, red. You got it.
And this is a Planeswalker. Not really, but it's like a Planeswalker you can't attack, where each turn it makes one of 3 random units or creatures. That's what they're called.
Units, Jesus. Oh my God. How much health do these units have?
Well, one of them has 1 health, another one has 1 health, another one has 2 health. No, it's a 1/2 rogue that pings something for 1, 2/1 lifelinker, or a 3/1 trample, and they all have haste.
Yes, you did it. Nice job. And then another one that comes to mind is Doom Foretold. Well,
Doom Foretold's impossible to know what it does, even if you do then read.
I know, that's the funny part.
It's like a 2 white black enchantment that says, like, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, they must sacrifice a non-token, non-land permanent. Yes. If they can't, sacrifice Doom Foretold, and they discard a card. You gain 2 life, they lose 2 life, and you put a 2/2 knight into play and draw a card.
Yes, that is exactly right. So you do know the text on the card, but even when knowing that, I still have to go, okay, so what happens now? Right? It's like that goes there, you lose that.
And you have to sack Doom Foretold itself.
Yes. To itself, in which case the things don't happen. So, yeah. It is interesting design. Like, it works. It's just, I always have to read that thing, and I always will. Okay, let's get into the meat and potatoes here. From a design and development aspect, how did the set fare? How were the mechanics? What were the wins and the losses for Throne of Eldraine?
All right. Well, there was some good stuff and there was some bad stuff. The good stuff is I actually liked. This is where we differ. I think I liked how monocolor played out. I thought the light touch monocolor was cooler than the more heavy handed. You have to play monocolor because all the busted cards cost 4 of a color, which is what Shadowmoor did. I really didn't like that. I liked the light tribal themes that, knights mattered, non-humans mattered, but it wasn't like super impactful. Like, yes, some decks cared more about that than others, but it wasn't generally so linear. Your knights deck would have non-knights and your non-humans deck would have humans. You would just try to maximize your synergies. There was also a decent amount of synergy options, but you could still just draft it straight up. Like if you were less experienced at drafting or you don't like drafting complicated things, there were definitely some straight up like ABC aggro decks or even just classic control decks to draft. I think all this stuff is good. I also think that combat tricks being good is good to have every once in a while. The biggest miss, I think, for me or for us actually was nothing stood out as like, this is really fun. I want to keep doing this. I don't know what unique experience it brought to the table, or decks that it brought to the table that played out in a really interesting way. It still felt a little bit more. And I think maybe the monocolor decks have something to do with it, a little bit more straightforward because the themes don't vary that much. Like your average mono blue deck or mono red deck is going to be pretty similar to your next one. Like comparing deck to deck, it's just not that different. Whereas like in most sets, a 2-color deck can have a very different texture than another 2-color deck, or at least is more likely to.
Yeah, exactly. And, another way to kind of snapshot this is if we fast forward like a couple of years, what's the thing from this set that's going to stand out? Then I'm going to go, oh, I remember that. I love drafting the Gates deck from blankety blank or whatever. Oh, that was a set with the thing. I don't think of anything good. The card I'll remember the most is Merfolk Secret Keeper, and not for good reasons. So I think that's not great, when you don't have that.
I think, and this is kind of what I alluded to earlier. There were some negative kind of impacts on Eldraine that kind of weren't Eldraine Draft's fault exactly. The Merfolk Secret Keeper effect did, which is to say that on Arena, it was way too easy to get. You played against it too often. I think that did poison the well some. And not just for us. I think there was plenty of people who probably interacted with Arena Draft or Eldraine Draft via Arena and decided this is not for me because I think that format wasn't very fun. That also makes it hard to like want to do it even when it's going to be different, like on Magic Online. I think that does actually impact it. Yeah. I also think the wrecking ball it threw through constructed Magic this year. I think you can and should separate those things, but it can be hard sometimes. Like for me personally, and this isn't speaking for anyone else, my interest in Magic was at a like almost historical low near the end of Eldraine. And for a lot of like non-limited or even potentially non-exactly gameplay reasons, but that's where it was. And it's hard for me to separate that because I don't know, I'm a human being. I'm not a robot. I look at Eldraine and I think like, I'm just kind of off Magic. This doesn't make me like, I don't really want to draft right now. And it's not really that much to do with Eldraine. It has to do with all the other things going on in Magic, which we've talked about. So I don't want to rehash it, but I'm just saying like that does matter. Like that, the timing does matter,
It does. And it does reach out to other things because there's a lot of interesting details with this stuff. Like you mentioned the Arena thing. It wasn't just, it was bad enough that it was just, you would see this deck too often. And I like that you highlighted, especially as a newer player, the mill deck, you play against it too often. But on top of that, new players hate getting milled. They hate it. They feel like they're being scammed or cheated or, that you're cheating, like you're taking some shortcut in the game or something like that. They hate it and they feel helpless. And so, like it's similar. It's like land destruction and stuff like that. Like there's certain things that strike a very firm chord, particularly with new players. Counter spells are the same way. New players do not they feel like counters are cheap. They're just like, well, you didn't do anything. You just sat there and waited for me. I thought we were both going to be doing things, and you just reacted to what I did. And I don't like that. And that has an extra emotional impact on them. Looking at the big picture stuff, one of the lenses that I view Magic through is the professional players, the Pro Tour, the Mythic Championships, the highest level of competitive play, because that's a big part of my job. And, we had what was effectively the last Pro Tour in Richmond. It's still, paper Magic continues, but it's in a different form now. And it was literally the worst metagame breakdown ever at the Pro Tour. Ever. Like, go through all of the history of the Pro Tour, and they had never even eclipsed 50% of a metagame from one archetype. And we hit almost 70.
Yeah.
It was historically, and it's hard, like you said, to separate that out, I think, mentally, right? Because, I don't want somebody listening to the show who says, I really love drafting Eldraine, because I know a lot of people that did. There's definitely a chance that some of these bigger picture Magic community things that resulted from some of the cards and some of the stuff from Eldraine are, painting our versions of it a little differently, than maybe somebody who's just like, look, I just drafted and it was a totally good set. Right. Cause we've obviously had our discussion about that already, but it is interesting how far reaching your opinions can get when you're as immersed as you and I are, and a set has such a big impact on other things besides limited as well, which this did.
Yeah. And I think it is worth noting, that all this factors into how we end up interacting with the set and how we end up playing with the set. And I think that, and some of these, are more personal to us than other people, but I think some of this did play into an overall fatigue or disillusionment with Magic that a lot of people are going through. I mean, look, as someone who, has access to kind of behavior in terms of what content people are reading when in regards to Channel Fireball, or how many people are visiting to read about these different formats, or what cards people are buying. Like, the interest level in Magic is lower than it has been. And I don't think that's Throne of Eldraine Limited's fault, but I also don't think Throne of Eldraine Limited really carried much weight either. I think the fact that the arena experience was different, and I don't think overall positive. You can. I think it's definitely okay for there to be a world where arena is different than paper in terms of limited. I don't think that's intrinsically bad. What I think is not great is when that experience is also just actually bad itself, which I think it was. Like, right. I think that the getting milled out experience is not. I have trouble seeing how that could be regarded as a positive one. So right. I think that even if you want to say, hey, it's okay if these are different, which I think is fine. I think saying, hey, they're different, but also this one sucks, that's not great. And I think that Throne Limited definitely took a hit as a result. Look, I know a lot of people love Throne. Some people think it's like one of the best sets ever, and you're not wrong about that. Like, you get to rate your own sets. When I say here's the best sets limited, it kind of goes unstated that these are what I think are the best sets. And yes, more people think Dominaria and Innistrad are better than, random core sets or Zendikar. But it doesn't mean someone who says, I think Zendikar is the best set ever is necessarily like intrinsically wrong. Right. Obviously people agree more with some things than others, but there still is room to disagree here. I just think that Eldraine wasn't at its base level like the best ever. And then when you combine that with some of the other things that went wrong, I think the arena thing just did go wrong. I don't think there's really a way around that. Then that you end up in a spot where it's not the most rewarding experience for everyone.
Right. And, we're kind of bleeding into what did the format teach us, or what are the takeaways from it? And, one of my takeaways was, to me, this was kind of a big red flag for the arena stuff on, look, either these bots are going to have to be, a lot more effort's going to have to be put into them so that things are much more balanced. or human drafting on Arena has to become a priority if Limited is going to thrive on Arena. You know, if they want people to come in and spend gems on drafting, you know, this to me was the format that sort of has drawn a line in the sand that says this pattern. Before I was quite willing to be forgiving because it was like Arena was relatively new. And frankly, it worked fine. I mean, the bots still let me draft. It wasn't like I wasn't drafting Magic, right?
Look,
and
look,
they're,
when,
you know, for what they are, they're pretty good.
When it came to M20, for example, people were like, wow, you get a lot of Heartseeker bows and you can draft this deck a lot or whatever. But I still felt that was a game I was playing that was fun. I think that Eldraine just didn't feel like that. I did a draft and, you know, watched a couple on Twitch, came back, did another one, and I'm just like, no, this is right.
And we ended up going back to Magic Online for the majority of our drafts for this format. And so, you know, that's not a great thing from an Arena perspective, right? And so I do hope that you know, that was heated. You know, that, hey, this is going to keep happening like this. Yeah. Basically, every set that comes out, they're spinning the wheel and there's going to be an archetype or a card or something that slips through. They can tweak and adjust, and they do, to their credit. But for the most part, every format, I can write down a card or a type of deck that defined its run on Arena, where that wasn't true for Paper or Magic Online. And if you hit enough whammies in a row, where a whammy being like, hey, the mill deck's really too good, versus like when the Gates deck was too good, but people loved drafting that. So they were like, you know.
But that's what I'm talking about. Like, I'm actually okay living in the world. And this is where I think I disagree with you also. I think it's okay if Arena draft's just different. And look, the Gates is a perfect example. Yes, Gates was busted. Yes, they dialed it back and that was for the best, but it was fun. People like doing it. And, you know, that made it okay. It was just you're playing a different format and this is what you're doing. And I think that was cool. What I don't think is good is when like you said, this is where we verge back into agreement, the mill deck was too good. Or if there was like, I don't know, basically any kind of dumb linear deck, especially one that uses a underrated common, is too good and you can get 5 or 6 of them. It's just super repetitive, not fun. That's really bad, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess my bigger point was, let's take my opinion, your opinion, everybody's opinion off the table, or mine and yours opinion off the table about like what we think is fun or not. You keep spinning that wheel, you're going to hit another Merfolk Secret Keeper style thing that down
part,
the line.
That part,
right?
I think,
so
is
that
true.
needs to be addressed structurally, you know, where you know, it seems like the best fix would be to have human.
Yeah. I mean, I look, I ultimately would prefer there to be human drafting as well. I'm not, you know, I don't like not having it, but I do think that it's okay if it exists in this other space. It'd be nice if that space was a little bit more well regulated and didn't have those misses. Because look, War of the Spark is back on Arena, right? I really enjoy drafting War of the Spark, and I enjoy drafting it on Arena. Like I have found drafting War of the Spark on Arena to be a satisfying experience.
What was the thing with that set?
But there wasn't one.
Oh, that one actually ended up being balanced.
I can't think of like an Arena archetype that is like, oh no, War of the Spark is on Arena. This is what everyone does. It just doesn't. I don't think that's how that one plays out.
Everybody just plays a bunch of Planeswalkers. Complains about that. Okay, well, so what do we want to take away from the set here? Because we've said a lot. This set was obviously bittersweet. Like there's some really great things about it and some things that we didn't like as much. What grade do we give it? What do we want to see, you know, going forward?
I think my unbiased grade to like that, you know, kind of doesn't put anything onto the set that was not the set's fault is I think Throne of Eldraine would get like a B. Like,
okay, I was going to say B minus.
Yeah, I think that the grade that reflects how I engaged with the set is probably closer to a D.
Yeah,
but I don't think that's.
There's a lot more to that story.
I don't think that's the fault of Throne of Eldraine, and I actually don't think I think if we were to have a new set, then like with that has very similar, and it just the timing was different, constructed was different, organized play was different. That I would probably it would probably be different for me.
Yeah,
like
I think that's just being honest.
Yeah, and I think that's something I think is worth noting as well. Like it's not you, it's me. I think that Throne had some things that I consider issues, but overall, I think the set was a solid set. My engagement with Magic was lower, but that had nothing to do with the set. And actually, I have good news in that Cube has really helped me kind of rediscover my love for Magic. Not that it ever went away, but there was just a month where I didn't really want to play. I have also liked the look of Theros. I think Theros looks very good. So I'm excited about what's coming next for Magic, and I feel good about that. I just think, it just Throne had a lot of stuff go wrong in ways that made me not want to engage with it. So
yeah, and for me, the takeaway is really interesting. It's that I cannot criticize this set in a meaningful. Like I can't say, well, the white, white was too bad, or the mana cost, or they tried this thing and it didn't work. Everything worked. Everything ended up being pretty balanced. I'm not the biggest fan of the monocolor decks because I think they're just kind of boring for the most part, but whatever. I like having, instead of 10 viable archetypes, up to 15, some percentage of those. I think that's cool too. I don't know why this set didn't resonate with me. It's probably a combination of the things, but when it's gone, I'm just going to move on. Like, yeah. I feel like it was like a fine set, and then it's just time to go on. And it is weird because I'm not used to that. The last 6 sets or something, I've been like, oh man, I like this one. I'm nervous about going to the next one because I want to stick with it. But that's just how it ended up being for Eldraine. Like you said, it's probably a combination of outside factors as well. To finish things off, Luis, what was your favorite card in the format?
My favorite card in the format was Gingerbrute, just because it perfectly encapsulated everything I like about Magic. Like, it did a really good job of that. And I just love
such a cool card.
Yeah.
Such a cool card. I mean, seriously, one of the best designs I've ever seen. It's just unreal how good that card is design wise. My favorite card was Covetous Urge. And it's powerful, but it's my kind of powerful, which is that, I mean, you have to take, so it has to be in blue, black, or blue. So it's kind of narrow.
Yeah.
But the turn you cast it is not great for you. Like, you're like, tap all my mana, take away a card from your hand, but they get to have free reign on you besides that, right? And then you have to later on pay the mana for the thing. So it's very slow. But I like cards like that, where there's like some tension, kind of a ancestral vision or something along those lines, where it's like, am I gonna make it around the corner here and actually get the value out of this thing? Or is this going to be one of those spots where I flew a little too close to the sun? And even though I got the card out of their hand, I never actually got to utilize it. And it also has that sort of gamble-y feel, if you will, where you don't know what you're going to get when you cast it. Like it could be that their hand's really bad or that they don't have the thing to bring you back. And other times, you're playing blue black and you don't have many ways to gain life, and they have some big life linker and you're like, oh, I did it, and I can stabilize now. I like all of that, the way that it plays out, the ridiculous mana cost. And I really like that they added that extra kicker clause of you can take something from their graveyard, because this card would be a real pain if you had to build your deck around it mana-wise and spend all 4 mana, and then they don't have any cards in hand and you just don't get anything. I really like that they thought of that scenario for such a high leverage card. So Covetous Urge ended up being my favorite card in this set.
Yeah, Covetous Urge is really sweet.
It's also just sweet, yeah. All right, that's going to do it for this one. Great job, Luis. Interesting set, man. I mean, this one, going over it and kind of verbalizing all this stuff, it felt like therapy, but kind of in a good way,
Well, well, therapy is good, but
well, I go to therapy. I'm not. Yeah. I didn't mean it. I guess I don't know what you might have meant by it. Yeah.
I think that it's good to be introspective and to kind of place the right things in the right places. And in this case, yes, Throne was largely a miss for us, but I don't think it's fair to say that was because of Throne. I think
exactly.
Look, this is one of the things that's both great and sometimes terrible about Magic is a game that has a lot of different facets to it. And I've said this many times. You're not wrong or right if I say I like playing Magic. I'm a Magic player. I like playing Commander. I'm a Magic player. I like playing tournaments. I'm a Magic player. I like collecting the cards. All those things are fine. It turns out like we do care about things outside of just exactly the limited format and how it plays out. And that made it so when those things went off the rails, which they basically did this year more than any other time I can remember, it impacted our enjoyment of limited. That's not rocket science. Yep. And I don't think that's unfair. I don't think that's wrong. I just think that's what it is. So, that's where we ended up. And it's, I think, like I said, very useful to kind of investigate that and also to see what you can do to make things better, to not feel that way or there's nothing wrong with feeling a certain way. And it's also especially good to actually like feel things. Like pretending you don't is a bad thing. But I think it's good to also look at the upside and what can I do to kind of not be impacted as much. And for me, it's kind of like disengaging a bit and focusing on the things I do love, which is like Cube.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And, we want to know what you think too. Luis and I are deeply entrenched into different levels of Magic and that, can have effects on us in different ways. But if you're, a normal Magic player out there, just, doing your drafts and battling when you get home from work or school or whatever, did these things affect you in that way? You can let us know. You can follow us on social media, Marshall_LR and Luis's LSV. And we always want to know what, if you're thinking, oh, this set was great, no issue at all. Or if it's like, yeah, no, I do kind of feel that way too. I am curious to hear about that. I want to remind you, the show is brought to you by channelfireball.com. You can go to channelfireball.com/baller to check out the Baller Box presented by Cartamajigs. And again, there's 2 different options there and they get sent out to you 4 times per year and you get a box of cool Magic stuff. You can check out the kind of stuff that you can get on that link. And I'll put it in the show notes as well if you're interested in that. If you want to find other things related to the show, Luis's stream, all that kind of stuff, lrcast.com has that, as well as a full show archive. That's right. Every single episode going back now over 10 years of limited resources with all 4 co-hosts, every level up episode, everything's there available you can stream it off of the website. You can download the episodes. You can, of course, subscribe. And once again, we do try to make the show available to you in as many places as possible. Our goal is just to make it as easy for you to get the show as possible. So, of course, you can use any podcast app or program on your computer or phone to download it. But also, we have a YouTube channel that has card images on the videos as well. So if you're kind of a visual learner and you like following along with the cards we're talking about, you can bring it up on YouTube and watch there. You can get it on Spotify, on Stitcher, basically on Pandora. Basically, we try to make it available anywhere. And if there is a place that you'd like to see it, you can let me know, and I'll do my best to try to incorporate that into our workflow as well. That's going to do it for this show. Thanks so much for hanging out. We'll see you next week.
So I had a conversation with a friend who was, dissatisfied with something going on, and it reminded me. You've heard the prayer, right? Let God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to accept the things I can, and the wisdom to tell the difference. Mm-hmm. And that really struck at the heart of kind of like where I feel a lot of people get tripped up, because there's a balance to be struck here, right? Something's happening that you don't like, right? Let's say work is probably one of the easiest places to use this example. At your job, something's happening that you don't like. And if you've had a job before, which, and I know some people haven't really, there will always be something you don't like. I mean, both of us have worked at a couple different places in a couple different scenarios. We also talked with, we're old enough now. We've talked to people, seen what's happening at their work, all that stuff. Is there any job you've ever had where there weren't things you didn't like, including the one you have now?
Of course not. Yeah. No matter what your job is, there's always those things.
And look, right now you even have what I think a lot of people would describe as if not the dream job, a very good job, right? You get to set your hours. You get to make a lot of your own decisions. Mm-hmm. Obviously there are some downsides. For example, you're dependent on the actions of other people to a greater degree, right? You have less job security.
Yep.
And, but you get to control everything, and there are things that make you unhappy. And so what it's worth knowing is when something's making you unhappy, you've got a couple options. One is to deal with it. Just like, you don't have to, you can just accept it, right? You can just say like, hey, you know what? It makes me unhappy that this happens, but it's not going to change. So I should just learn to accept it. And I think that's a perfectly fine way to go, because, when we've had things that we didn't like about our jobs or about a situation or about a relationship with another person, whether it's a friend or an SO or whatever, if there's something that they're not likely to change or you're not able to get them to change, like, I think accepting it is really important, because you don't want to just be sitting there like getting steaming about this. Like, how many people do you know that go to work every day and every day get pissed off about the same thing?
Yeah, even though they know it's going to happen, and they still just get worked up every day.
Like they'd never have, they always run out of coffee by noon, and that's one you can maybe solve by bringing your own coffee or telling the office manager, hey, we really need coffee or whatever. Or, customers always do this. And it's like, well, customers will always do that. Whatever the thing is you don't like, the customers will always do that. Yes. That's not going to change. So being able to accept it can be really important, both for your sanity, your mental health, for basically your happiness, right? Because if something's not going to change and you have to deal with it all the time, accepting it's great. You now, this is no longer a problem. Like, look, that this thing that you don't like is going to happen. So if you then just kind of reframe it and think like, hey, I like this job. I like my coworkers. I like the work I'm doing. This is part of that. Okay, I guess I just have to deal with this. This is just like, I know what I signed up for. This is fine. My friend is always 20 minutes late. Okay, so I either have to like try to force them to change, but if they're not going to change and I still value them as a friend, you just know what it is. Like, look, I'm friends with a lot of people who do, things like that. Everyone has their quirks. I do myself. We just live with it, right? Because we do value our friends, and they're our friends for a reason.
Yes.
So the flip side of that, though, is having the courage to change the things you can. So some are easier than others, but some are, I really don't like the way my boss / friend / parent / whatever does this thing. What if you talk to them about it? What if you say like, hey, I really don't like that you always assume, I'm able to do this favor for you. And I find it's inconsiderate. Or, hey, I really don't like that you don't tell me when I'm scheduled to work. Like if you're like, let's say, you work at a restaurant or something, or where you get scheduled every 2 weeks, or like you give us our work schedules on Sunday and, and we have to be at work on Monday. That's really uncomfortable. I don't know if I'm going to work Monday or not. Can you get those done by Friday so I can plan my weekend around it? Like, and look, sometimes your boss will say, or whoever's doing the scheduling will say, yeah, I can do that. And sometimes they won't. And again, you have to decide where you want to go next,
Yeah.
But I think it's really, really worth taking the time to try to change things, especially if they're things that, could be changed. Like some things people do, they can't change, like it's just not going to happen. And you have to understand that. But the things that you can change, sometimes it takes courage to change them, and you should try to do it. It's worth it. Because imagine if it's something that bothered you every day and you got to change it. Now your every day is better. Yes. So actually the way we work is that becomes our baseline, and then we don't get happier, from there. And then something else bothers you. But, that's a different part of human psychology.
Indeed.
So having the courage to change things, very important. It's also, I think, fairly important to be able to know the difference between the two of those things, though often because people are, I think, intrinsically kind of cowards, it would be better for you to try to change something first instead of assume it can't be changed, because you'd be surprised about the things that can change. Like, maybe you think something's a given, but you say like, let's go back to work for an example. Mm-hmm. Something is happening at your work. You don't think it can be changed. But if you try and change it, it's possible that whoever you talk to who has authority to change it values you enough or is able to make an exception.
Yeah.
Wow, great. This is, I didn't think that could happen. And then the other option, if that doesn't work, is maybe more extreme, which is maybe find a new job. Maybe go somewhere else where this isn't a problem. Because the thing I hate the most, the thing I really want to caution against, which I've taken maybe a meandering road, but it really is, it's really bad to just be bothered by the same things or thing every day and not take steps to change it or take steps to like mentally accept it. Because if you end up in that spot, you're doing what a lot of people do, and I think is really unhealthy, is you're just making yourself unhappy with no hope for the future.
Yes.
Like you're not going, like things aren't magically going to get better. Like they will continue to be as bad as they are. I mean, yes, every now and then something can change, you know, but for the most part, if you're in this spot, like no one's going to change it for you, you know, like it's not just going to magically be solved. So right. I think it's really important that you take steps to either be okay with the situation or change it, and don't be afraid to take drastic action. And look, I'm not telling you to quit your job. Like, I don't want to give irresponsible advice, but I do think that a lot of people don't take enough steps to change their lives. And, you know, I've been guilty of this. You've been guilty of this. We've all been guilty of this, but part of kind of getting older and having more experience is realizing there are less things that are givens than you thought. Like, yeah. I mean, if you've ever been at a job where you feel like someone's getting special treatment, you know, it could just be that they just asked for it. And I'm not saying it's good to like have different rules for different people, but you know, sometimes you'd be surprised at what you can get if you ask for it.
It's true.
So I don't know. I just hate seeing people stuck in this infinite loop of dissatisfaction without either taking the action to change it or taking the action, because it is actually a conscious action, taking the conscious action to feel better about the situation. So I think it's worth,
good advice.
It's worth striving for that kind of stuff. I do think it matters, you know?